Good evening, and right before we dive in, I'll quickly mention that finally, over the weekend, we had the world premiere of an awesome documentary called No Farmers, No Food, in which we exposed how Agenda 21, which trickles down from the UN, manifests itself as concrete policies across the whole world, handcuffing farmers, forcing them out of business, while at the same time propping up a new industry of edible insects. We spent quite literally a whole year traveling the whole world to make this particular film, and I'm super glad to report to you that the film was very well received. We got about a minute-long standing ovation, with many of the farmers and ranchers in attendance saying that they're going to bring the film back to their local communities in order to help it spread far and wide. And so, if you'd like to check the film out for yourself, the link to it will be right there at the very top of the description box below. I hope you watch it, and I also hope that you share it with anyone in your life who you think really needs to know about what's happening behind the scenes in this world. Again, that link will be right there at the top of the description box below. Now, jumping into today's main topic, for some odd reason, the CDC is just refusing to release the most recent updated data on the number of post-vaccination heart inflammation cases. You see, even though it was treated as essentially a conspiracy theory at first, it's already been a known fact for quite a while now that the COVID vaccines can cause heart inflammation in the form of either myocarditis or pericarditis. Now, generally, you can find the most updated number of heart inflammation cases over in the Vaers system. And in case you haven't heard of it before, the Vaers system is a database that's jointly run by the FDA and the CDC, and it tracks the number of adverse reactions to the vaccines, not just the COVID vaccine, but to all vaccines. And although technically anyone can submit the reports into the Vaers system, if you dig through the research, you find that most of the reports are entered by healthcare providers. Usually it's a nurse or a doctor whose patient experiences some type of adverse reaction after getting a shot. And there are also safeguards in place such that if people submit fake information into the Vaers system, they can face actual criminal prosecution. Now, that's all to say that the Vaers system, while not being 100% perfect, is relatively reliable. And typically, when the CDC would have a meeting with their vaccine advisors regarding whether or not to release an updated version of the vaccine and to recommend it to Americans, they would present the numbers found in the Vaers system to their advisors so that they can make an educated decision. The CDC would typically show the number of myocarditis cases that were found in the Vaers system when meeting with their vaccine advisory panel. However, something interesting happened in their most recent meeting, which took place on September the 12th, about 2 weeks ago. The CDC, in that meeting, made no mention of the Vaers data. You heard that right. 2 weeks ago, CDC officials met with the Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices, which is essentially the advisory panel on vaccines. In fact, according to the CDC website, here is how they describe the Advisory Committee. Quote, "The Advisory Committee on Immunization Practices includes 15 voting members responsible for making vaccine recommendations. And the purpose of this meeting between the Advisory Committee and the CDC was to help these advisors in considering which groups of people here in America should be recommended to get the latest formulation of the COVID vaccine, the one that was recently approved." And so basically, the CDC was here in this meeting in order to give the advisors the latest data that was available, as well as to answer any of their possible questions before the advisors turn around and give their recommendations in terms of who should be getting the shot or not. But, as I mentioned earlier, during the CDC's presentation, well, they changed it up a little bit from their previous presentations. What happened was that Dr. Nicola Klein, who was presenting on behalf of the CDC, she was showing the advisors data, not from the Vaers system, but rather, she was showing them the data from the Vaccine Safety Data Link system, which is a totally separate monitoring system which covers a much smaller population than Vaers does. Furthermore, the data that she presented was relatively old. Quote, Dr. Klein said that just 2 cases of myocarditis after bivalent vaccination were detected in the Vaccine Safety Data Link through March 11th. The cases didn't trigger a safety signal among adults. Now, it is a little odd that they only chose to show data going up until March 11th, but setting that aside, the CDC presentation showed that there were just 2 cases of myocarditis following a bivalent vaccination. That's again, according to the Vaccine Safety Data Link system. However, if you were to look into the actual Vaers system, which, just for your reference, anyone in America can do, it's a searchable database that's available to the public, and if you search it for the number of heart inflammation cases following a bivalent vaccine, you get 98. 98 cases of myocarditis, pericarditis, or myopericarditis. 98 cases in the Vaers system, rather than the 2 cases that the CDC reported finding in the data link system. Now again, it's worth mentioning that since technically anyone can post in the Vaers system, those are not 98 confirmed cases. They're 98 reported cases. However, up until September, the CDC would report that number to the advisory committee. Except this time, they decided to not do that for some reason. It's not exactly clear why the CDC chose to go this route. And so we here at the Epoch Times, we reached out to the CDC in order to get the data, but they sent back to us something you could say was a bit surprising. A CDC spokesperson, they emailed us back saying that if we're interested in the data, we can check out this study right here. This is the study that they sent to us. You can see it up on screen for yourself, which is cool, except for the fact that the study that they sent to us only covers the data from August 31st up until October 23rd of last year, of 2022. That study, it only covered about a month and a half worth of data, and it's literally a year old. Now, just for your reference, that particular study, it was looking at the effects following vaccination with the updated bivalent formulation. That formulation, it began to be used widely in September, and the study runs until October 23rd, meaning it's about a month and a half following the use of the bivalent booster. And in the study that the CDC sent to us, they identified 9 reports of either myocarditis or pericarditis following vaccination with one of these bivalent vaccines. And out of those 9 reports, 7 were verified by medical review. And this is exactly where things stop adding up. Because think about it. In the presentation just earlier this month, the CDC spokesperson told the advisory body that according to the safety data link system, there were, quote, 2 cases of myocarditis after bivalent vaccination through March 11th. 2 cases according to the data link system. However, when we asked the CDC for confirmation, they sent us a study showing that just in the month of September and essentially half of October, there were 9 cases of myocarditis, with 7 of them being verified by medical review. That data came from the Vaers system. And so it makes you wonder, why would they present the number as being just 2 as of March 11th, when according to their own study, by October 23rd of last year, the number was already at least 7. And you would imagine that the number didn't remain just 7 from October all the way up to March. And so we here at the Epoch Times, we asked the CDC spokesman to send us more recent data, to which he interestingly responded by acknowledging that the CDC does have the data, but they're just not making it public yet, writing this in an email, quote, "When appropriate, the updated safety data will be published." Thank you very much for that. Regardless, that's what happened. According to the CDC's own analysis of the Vaers data, there were a minimum of 7 medically verified cases as of October 23rd of last year. However, what they chose to present to the advisory body is just 2 cases in a separate database that was significantly smaller. Regardless, circling back to that CDC meeting, besides Dr. Klein, there was another CDC official, Dr. Megan Wallace, who said the following, quote, "There are limited data to inform the myocarditis risk following an updated mRNA dose." Now, notably, she did not mention the cases reported to Vaers, but she still did make the point that the benefits of the vaccines outweigh any potential risks. And frankly, that seemed to be enough, because the vaccine advisory panel, they went ahead and they recommended the updated formulation of the COVID vaccine to virtually all Americans. And that decision of theirs was nearly unanimous, with Dr. Oliver Brooks, who is a member of the vaccine advisory panel, saying this after the presentation that was given by the CDC, quote, "We feel good about the fact that in the bivalent, we saw no signal for myocarditis." On the flip side, however, you had one lone member of the advisory panel who voted against the recommendation. This was Dr. Pablo Sanchez, and citing the risk of myocarditis, he said the following, quote, "I think we really need to level with our patients and say what is known and unknown rather than make a complete recommendation, especially for some groups that are limited data." Regardless of his dissenting opinion, though, the advisory panel voted 13-1 in favor of recommending the updated formulation to almost everyone 6 months and older. In fact, according to the recommendation, quote, "People who have not received a COVID-19 vaccine in the past 2 months should receive one of the new shots." And so, there you have it. And I should mention, this is in no way medical advice, and I'm in no way advocating for or against any possible medical intervention. I'm only reporting on the facts surrounding the meeting between the CDC and the Vaccine Advisory Panel, which took place 2 weeks ago on September the 12th, and regarding the information that was and was not presented during that meeting. If you'd like to go into the CDC's presentation or the study that they emailed us, I'll throw all those links down into the description box below this video, which I should mention is that same little description box right beside those like and subscribe buttons, both of which I hope you take a moment to smash so that this content and this video can be shared out to ever more people via the YouTube algorithm. And then lastly, as I mentioned at the very top of the episode as well, after a full year of quite literally traveling the world and also the US, we finally released our awesome documentary, No Farmers, No Food, Will You Eat the Bugs? Here's a trailer. food prices are skyrocketing around the world. And if you listen to world leaders, they'll tell you it's due to climate change.
Climate change is the biggest threat for the human beings.
And their solution might surprise you.
There are 1,900 edible insect species on the planet.
The European Commission has officially declared mealworms to be food.
Yes, this is future food.
The people in charge have determined that by switching our diet to crickets, ants, and mealworms, we'll be able to stop temperatures from rising, lower the price of food, and possibly to even save the planet.
It's never about innovation, it's always about getting rid of farmers.
Agenda 21 was meant to be the agenda for the 21st century. Some of the goals sound nice, ending hunger. Who could possibly be against ending hunger? It requires total power from the state.
I think it's a scam. A lot of this came about in the early 70s, the Clean Water Act, Clean Air Act, which were good things, but it's been abused from what the original intent is.
No, maybe
no,
not
there's
this
not a
one.
farm anymore. No, there's also not a farm anymore.
So all these people shut down because of the government policies?
Yeah.
I'm the 6th generation of farmer.
Yeah, I'm the 4th generation.
How many years have they owned this plot of land?
40 years.
I think we're the last generation.
They're shutting down the small and middle-sized family-run farms.
We either own property or we are property.
I don't think we can trust the government anymore because they want the land.
And our founding fathers understood that the land would be distributed among the people so they could always control their government.
Right now, things have tripled as far as cost. I think you're going to see across the board higher food prices.
Has anybody been held accountable for screwing up? No.
As every communist tyrant of the last 100 years has understood, if you control the food, you control the people.
Everything is falling apart. There is a shortage of food.
We're heading for a world food crisis, as we hear all the time.
Do you see any hope for the situation?
Yeah, we have to continue fighting for it. No farmers, no food. They will know it.
If you'd like to check out that phenomenal documentary in its glorious entirety, well, the link will be right there at the top of the description box below. I hope you click on it, I hope you check it out, and then after you watch it, I hope you love it, you share it with everyone in your life so that more people can know what's happening behind the scenes of this world. Again, that link is right there at the top of the description box below. I hope you check it out. And then until next time, I'm your host, Roman from the Epoch Times. Stay informed, most importantly, stay free.